Okay. So welcome everyone to our Cultural Commons Working Group Breakfast Chat. We are very excited to have Charlie Schweik as our speaker today, President of the International Association for the Study of the Commons. We are very honored. Charlie is a visiting scholar to the Ostrom Workshop this semester and professor in the Department of Environmental Conservation and the School of Public Policy at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. And we're going to be hearing about the World Librarians Program. I'd like to just give a little shout out for some upcoming programming. We are next Wednesday, we have a really exciting opportunity to attend a rehearsal of the ballet La Bayadère that's being restaged as Star on the Rise. So this is a reimagination of a historical ballet. And so we get to attend the rehearsal from 3:30 to 5:30. And then at 5:30, we have a private Q&A with the stagers, who are Phil Chan, the founder of Final Bow for Yellowface, and Doug Fullington, a ballet historian. So for more information about that, you can join our email list, you can contact me. Then we'll be going to see the performance of the ballet together as well on March 29th. And of course, we have upcoming breakfast chats every other Wednesday. So if you would like to present your work, just reach out to Jamie or me and we'll get you on the schedule. And now we can hand it over to Charlie.
Well, thanks so much. It's great to be here. I'm sorry I'm not there in person. I promise you I did not get COVID so I could avoid getting the bagels because I had promised to get the bagels today. But fortunately, I'm doing better. Fully vaccinated, that must have helped. Bear with me a little bit because I'm still having a little bit of the symptoms. And I'm thrilled to be able to give this, tell you about this. The more I thought about the Cultural Commons group, the more I thought this connected. And I've actually got an exciting thing that just happened yesterday that I'm going to show you. I'm going to try to keep this at 30 minutes, and I've actually got some questions for the group at the end that maybe will spur some, help me a little bit in terms of some of the things I'm puzzling about. You can hear me okay?
Yeah, great.
Good, and hopefully the sound will transmit when I show some video. So, I don't know how many of you were there in the lightning talks at the beginning of the semester, but one of the things I said in my lightning talk is a quote from Vincent Ostrom, which has always influenced me, that basically was theory without experience is fantasy, experience without theory is blind. When I heard about that, and I think the Ostroms always exhibited this, at least the workshop did too. Throughout my whole career, I've tried to always, as I'm thinking about theoretically about things, I've also tried to do some practice to inform what I'm doing. And this program is really an example of that. This is an on-the-ground practice effort. I won't get into this in today's talk, but central in one of my work is what's sometimes referred to as commons-based peer production. And that's embedded within this, but I won't get into that today. I'll probably talk more about that when I do the colloquium in April. But yeah, so what World Librarians is, well, let me just start going through the slides. Hold on. World Librarians is an on-the-ground operation where we're actually doing just what the name sounds. We're acting as librarians. My team at the University of Massachusetts acts as librarians to very rural schools, libraries, historically libraries. We even had a health center pre-pandemic that's not operational now. Where we're getting information to them. And so I'm going to explain how this actually works and show you some examples. And then I'm going to talk about some of the puzzles we have. But before I do that, this is not me. I'm really presenting on behalf of just kind of a remarkable group of people. In Malawi, in that country, Carl Meyer, I'll tell a little bit more about the story of how I met him. But this is his team. It's called Shift IT. It's a technology consulting organization in Blantyre, Malawi. This is my colleague Warooks in Kenya, who I met in a conference, and we've been working together ever since. I'll tell you a little bit more about him and the site he's working in. This is our lead contact in our most recent instance of this in what's called the Dzaleka refugee camp in Malawi. It was built, the refugee camp was built for 10,000 people. It's right now, I think, somewhere around 60 to 65,000 people. And Toussaint runs an organization called Salama Africa. I believe Salama in Swahili means peace, or that's one definition of it. And this is him in one of the rooms he was showing me with sewing machines where they're trying to teach people how to sew, to make clothing. This is a whole group. This is the main building with all these kids that get an hour a day, and they're just lined up out the door. It's crazy to be able to do stuff. This is a screenshot of some of my team at UMass. Teresa Dooley is the scholarly communications librarian. So she does a lot of work around open educational resources. And these are the current group of just fantastic students. And the students, honestly, are the ones that have pulled off what we've been able to do. They're the ones. I don't have pictures of all the active ones at the bottom. There's about 5 others. For time, I won't read their names, and we have a bunch of alumni, and this has actually been pretty incredible in that it's maybe the first project I've had in my career where I actually have alumni still active in it, that continue to want to participate. So we've been building something, and I guess one message is, we want to scale this. So if one key message from this talk is if the Ostrom Workshop or Indiana University wants to participate, we'd absolutely welcome it. So a little history. I went to an open access talk, gosh, probably about 9 years ago now, by Peter Suber, who's at Harvard. He's at the time, and he probably still is, one of the lead scholars around open access. And he had written a book about open access and was giving a talk about it. And in that talk, Peter, coincidentally, I met Peter at Lynn Ostrom run workshop on Knowledge Commons. So I had seen him before. Actually, that workshop happened in the Tocqueville room. And so when I saw Peter here at UMass giving this talk, he mentioned something called OuterNet, and that he was working with OuterNet. Now, what OuterNet was, I think it's still operational, but they had a lot of financial problems, I think, in terms of getting their operations working. OuterNet was an organization that rented 3 satellites called KU band satellites, and they were, for a time, and maybe still doing this, distributing a free signal of data to about 85% of the Earth's terrestrial surface. What you're seeing is an OuterNet receiver. I actually put one up on my building in UMass, and what you're seeing on the right side are little Raspberry Pis that are the receivers. They were called lanterns. But when Peter told me about, or said this, my immediately thought was, this is like GPS. It's like if you have a receiver, you can get the signal. If you were in North Korea, you could get the signal. And my immediate question was, who's deciding what goes in that signal? Who picks? And OuterNet was based out of the Global North. And I know the Global South, Global North language, sometimes people use it or sometimes don't use it. I'll just use it for ease. I was wondering, okay, is this kind of another example of the Global North telling the Global South what to watch, read, or listen to? And so I asked Peter, could he put me in contact with OuterNet? Because I wanted to ask him that question. And then I wanted to see if there was a way to make it such that it wasn't such a Global North news feed in a way. And that happened. I met with a guy named, from OuterNet. And that's how I actually made the connection to the guy in Malawi that I introduced earlier, Carl Mayer. Carl was a early adopter of OuterNet at a school down in Malawi. And he and I got in touch, and we were able to start talking about, well, how could we use OuterNet to make it such that the people in Malawi could be asking for content rather than being given content that they had no choice. And so that's kind of how it all got started. And so what Rural Librarians is, what we've been working on since that time in 2017 or so, or earlier than that, we're trying to provide offline teachers, librarians, students, even a healthcare center, as I said, in the Global South with open educational resources that they want, not what we in the Global North think they want. And so that question right there gets some interesting cultural aspects. I do have a link to a scholarly paper on this that I can send to anybody who wants, if they're more curious about it. It gets much into the Global South, Global North kind of dynamics in that paper. But so what I want to do is talk about how this works. It's operational. I want to show you some examples of the requests we've gotten. And then I want to raise some discussions, and I'm trying to do this fast, and there's a lot to tell you about. So what happens on the ground is, well, Carl in Malawi would somehow drum up funds to get solar power, to get used laptops, to get a USB stick called a KeyPod, which is a Chrome-based operating system that all the kids get around the necks. These 3 students have KeyPods that they plug into the laptops. So they have their own little computer that's about $7. We have a device called, OuterNet. I should close OuterNet. OuterNet business model didn't work. And so Carl and I decided, we discovered this thing called a Rachel. And I'll tell you more about Rachel in a minute. It's a offline Wi-Fi database of open educational content. Carl will set up the computer labs in these rural schools, and they really don't have anything often. We'll then set up the Rachel device, which I'll tell you more about. And then there's some other things we do for this workflow. Yeah, I'm going to go through this, so I'm going to just skip this for time. Pre-pandemic, we had about 20 operating schools, libraries. Pandemic really shut us down. And now we're starting to recover from that. So we're back operating with about 5 locations operating in Malawi and 1 startup in Kenya. And so I'm going to show you just where the locations are. So our oldest one, active one, is St. Michael's Girls, which here's a little map of Malawi. And the little dot shows where the location is. Yeah, so St. Michael's Girls. We have another one in a private secondary school called New Beginnings. The guy in the center, each of the people that I'm showing are what we call the couriers. They're our key, or teachers in the school, so that they're our key contacts. The gentleman in the middle and the bottom here is named Peter. So this is a New Beginnings school. This one, I don't have a picture of our courier, and I'm terrible pronouncing the name. We call it OTK, the Foundation Community Center. So we have another one active there. I'm going to talk a little bit more about what this device is in a second. I think, you can't see my cursor, sorry.
Oh, yes, we can.
Okay.
Daslika refugee camp, this is an image from there in Malawi. That's the one with the 65,000 people. And this is more of the Daslika camp. So again, this is Salama, Africa with the kids. This is actually their library for that 65,000 people. This is a picture interior of the library. I have a bookshelf. They just have very little. What you're seeing here at the top, if you can see my cursor, is what's called a bloom box. We went this was summer, July 23. In the picture down below, there's a really brilliant young woman named Sophie Ruse, who's a student at Stanford. And she actually has designed this computer lab that's basically solar powered. It's built out of half of a shipping container. And this is her third go with this. And we went out and helped build it that summer, along with the community. Some of the tables here were built by a carpenter that Toussaint, the guy at Salama Africa, hired. And so we have basically an operational computer lab that we installed, and it was largely Sophie and others that and my students raised money to set this up. So it's adjacent to this library. You can see the library right here. That's it, and it's operational at this point. And while we were there, we were teaching people in the Dislika refugee camp how to participate in World Librarians. This is a little video of the celebration of it. I'm just going to show a segment of it, but this is Toussaint in the Salama Africa. They have one of the things he's trying to do to help kids that really don't have a lot to do is have them dance. And so here's a little snippet of their celebration of the Bloom Box last summer with their dance. These are refugee kids working with Toussaint in Salama, Africa. I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to keep going just for time. Yeah, it was really fun. I could show more if you want, but let me, and I can't see anybody, so feel free if you've got questions of clarification. But let me go through the workflow. So this is and this took us some time to work out. Basically what happens is the person on the ground in the country, so either Warux in Kenya or Carl in Malawi, and Toussaint, we set up the school, and that takes a lot of work and effort and funds. And everything I'm showing you here, I've tried a couple times to get grants and I haven't been successful. I'm really surprised I haven't been, given what we're doing, but that's maybe an open question for the group if anybody has ideas. Maybe I've just gone to the wrong places, but we've done all this. This has all been volunteer pretty much, with the exception of Carl getting equipment on the ground. Somehow he gets funding for that. So Carl will set up a school. He'll then identify a school, and at some point he'll let me know who the teacher, what we call the requester, is, and we start a conversation, and that's now moved largely to WhatsApp. Typically, is how we make that conversation. I'll talk a little about data. Well, yeah, this is a little complicated for me to describe quickly. So once the requester has been identified, once the school has got their computer lab operational, then we start having WhatsApp messaging to kind of get the requester up and running. I had conversation this morning with one of the requesters at one of the locations this morning over WhatsApp. I'll talk about data posts in a minute. Well, I guess I'm going to have to. I went through let me explain the Rachel a little bit, because I went through that very quickly. The Rachel is like in that room, I think you probably have a Wi-Fi device up on the ceiling somewhere. And yep, it's very similar to that, but the key thing is it's offline. It's not connected to the internet, but it's got a hard drive on it. And on the hard drive is all of this open educational material that a group out of California developed, the Rachel. It stands for Remote Area Community Hotspot for Education and Learning. And the group that's made it is named World Possible in California. And so what they're doing is they're scraping the internet periodically for open educational materials. I mean, things like Khan Academy, Wikipedia are on this. a whole variety of things are on the Rachel. And so straight away, when we get a computer lab operational, what Carl does on the ground is he teaches the teachers and the students, the teachers teach the students how to use their computers to get to the Rachel device and find all this open educational material. So straight away we've delivered something, but it still hits exactly in my point about, okay, who chooses what goes on the Rachel? And World Possible does that. And there's ways to get material from other parts of the country, other parts of the world on it. But it still is somebody's making the decision on what material's on there. So what World Librarian does in the heart of it is that we set up a requester system in a workflow that allows us to receive requests from the users, find material we think solves their request just like a librarian would do, and then we transmit it back, and the teacher uploads it to the Rachel, and the students can use it. So that's the workflow I'm explaining. A complicated thing that I maybe I won't get to, just believe me, it works, is that the Rachel also has an offline email system and it's called Data Post. And so the way the requester requests things to us is they send us offline emails through this Data Post app, which is an app that they do through their cell phone. So we used to use Twitter for communication, but Twitter blew up, and I'm sorry, I really don't want to use X. So we think Data Post is a better system anyway. So we get these requests through this Data Post system. And then what our team, it goes to a Gmail account at UMass, and our team then, I have just a wonderful set of colleagues, student colleagues who manage this whole thing. And our manager will respond back saying, we've received your content requests, we'll work on it. Then at UMass, the student team, led by our scholarly communications librarian, Teresa, who's just amazing. We've got a spreadsheet data management system, and what you're seeing here are some of the most recent requests that we've gotten from the different. This is New Beginning School, 4 of them, and Deslika at the bottom, and this is we use a spreadsheet to assign students to do searches, to do the whole process on our end to find content that we think is what they want, and then to send it back. And so we have a management system in place. We use, what's really nice on the UMass side is that this really, when we're talking about culture and just life experience, I guess, one of the things I think the students find from this is suddenly you're getting requests for information that seems like it would be so easy in America, in our institution. And so they very, very quickly get to see the information have and have nots in real life. And then the other thing is our students, you really get exposed to open access, Creative Commons types of things and search mechanisms. And I've had students say, once I filter for Creative Commons license stuff, I can't believe how much I lose compared to the private information I can get through the UMass libraries or whatever. So it's really an eye-opener for UMass students as they do these requests as librarians. Search a share. Yeah. So at this point, sorry, I got the arrow messed me up. Brain fog. Sorry. So then once we find this stuff, we then send it back we communicate that we found it, and we use, I should have this here. We're using Data Post as attachments. So we actually email them the files, and some of these in Malawi, it's videos that are the big things. Because English isn't their first language. This starts getting into a cultural thing around language. We don't speak their native language, so the materials we're finding are in English. And the students in these schools really like video because they can watch and they can hear rather than PDF files. That isn't always the case. We have requests often for, PDF type files. But whatever we find, we send to a data post message as attachments, and the videos are big. So I think on average, any request has been roughly 10 megabytes of material that we send back. And so now I'm hitting a point that was a big puzzle for us. It took me a while to understand this, but what happens is, and I don't know why it took me so long, but the courier is using their personal cell phone to receive those emails. And this is an important point. So the teacher in a school who's, I don't know how much they're making, for a salary, but to download on their personal cell phone plan in Malawi, 10 megabytes is not a small cost. So this was a big problem. Like, we know we can get it to them through their cell phones, but how do we cover that? And this is where one of my students discovered something I wasn't aware of called World Remit, which is a way, and maybe some of you are aware of this. Remember, this was about maybe 5 years ago. World Remit it blows my mind. If I have the cell phone number of the courier in Malawi, I can, with a credit card, go through World Remit and up their data plan. So I'm not giving them money, I'm giving them data to offload the cost of the downloads. And what we call this digital postage. So what we moved to is I basically do a monthly payment to the couriers with about 10 US dollars. And that right now seems to be covering the costs that they incur for they're using their cell plan to download. That was a really huge innovation for us because we really weren't sure how to handle that, and it seems to be working. So a key part of the workflow is I pay for it. It's an interesting problem with universities, and we have business credit cards, but I've been having some problems with procurement around this. But anyway, it's working. Once the teacher gets the data on their cell phone, then they move over to the Rachel, and they use using their cell phone, they upload to an option file share. So they can just upload directly to the Rachel. This is actually a screenshot of what the kids see of the materials that are on the Rachel on their computers. But so we're able to create new libraries on the Rachel of content that we've sent them. Yeah, and then the students can access the content through the laptops. And then we finalize the workflow by just saying, well, hopefully the requester will send something back that says we've received it and this has been useful, and or it's not been useful. You didn't understand our request. We haven't had as much of that. We've had a lot of thank you for our content, but I'm still working on kind of the social norms of getting requesters to let us know how the content worked. I'm sure librarians in real life have this problem where the person goes off and then never comes back and tells them whether that really helped them or not. Okay, so I'm going to just show, I'm looking at time, I'm taking too much, but yeah. So here's some examples. So in the early days when we were using Twitter, here's some Twitter ones. This was Green Malata. It's not a school that's operational right now, but they were asking stuff about how to dry tomatoes in subtropical weather. So a lot of the requests we get are actually what I would call makerspace requests or DIY requests. It's pretty interesting. And we got another we want content on aeroponics. And yeah, and now this is an example on the right of them saying, okay, we received the content. We want content on vegetable driving and carpentry. This one was, hard to hear. Waruks in Kenya tried a startup that was adjacent to the largest slum in, well, the largest trash, dump in Eastern Africa, in Nairobi. And these are kids that live adjacent to that slum and that dump. And these kids asked, how do we make shoes out of trash? How do we make a mat out of trash? How do we make toys out of trash? And boy, for our kids, my colleagues that I work with, I mean, this was so hard for us to receive. It was just really hard. What my searcher team found were these, among other things, were these amazing videos out of in India. Sorry, I'm still brain fogged. On how to make toys out of trash. And we sent these videos to the kids, and Waruk sent me videos back of the kids making the toys that were in the videos that we sent. And that was just really pretty amazing cycle. In Dazlika, this is a pretty fun one. If you remember that video of the dancing team, well, we got a request from Dazlika from Salama, Africa, saying we want software for video editing. What this is, again, this is my colleague Toussaint in his building in this refugee camp. And when I was there, he showed me this little music room where they had some refugee playing music and trying to record music. So what Toussaint told me is this is the only music recording studio in 100 miles. And so they asked us for software so they could make music videos. And one of my brilliant colleagues, students, found DaVinci Resolve, which is freeware, and which looks, from a very cursory look, really good video software. And we transmitted that to Toussaint. He got it operational. And what I'm going to show you now is what I got 2 days ago, which is their first video using that software.
You are very nice.
I want to show you it all, but I'm going too long. We can come back to it if you want to see the rest.
What camera do they use?
What's that?
Cameras, what's the camera they use?
I've seen Toussaint just use a cell phone.
I see, okay, thanks.
Yeah. I think that's probably what they're using.
Yeah.
So these are some other requests that have come in that we're looking at. I mean, you can just see, these are the most recent ones. How to cultivate oyster and shiitake mushrooms. Big, broad question about climate change. What can we do here locally to mitigate its effects? Issues about plastic recycling, and so on, permaculture. So you can see just the types of rich requests we're getting. Yeah, wow, okay. Well, I thought I'm still long, but this is my last slide. So, you know, I'm happy to answer any questions on the workflow or anything on that. If anybody has it or any clarification questions, I went through that awfully fast. But from a cultural standpoint, we found it's really challenging in some ways to act as a librarian for a different culture. And I've gotten, you know, another really tough request we got was we want information on anti-female genital mutilation programs, programs to communicate that practice. Wow. And of course we did that. Our students did that, and you know, we have a lot of discussions about librarians and just playing the role of a librarian. You just try to help the requester. But that one was an interesting one because it got us wondering a little bit about what we send back and culturally, you know, the implications and things. And one of the big things is, you know, what we've realized is what we really want to do is get the searcher team as close to the community as possible. So right now, New Beginnings School, one of the Bloombox locations, just got Starlink. The satellite internet, And that's not going to be accessible at all to, and it's probably going to be really costly, I imagine. But we have an opportunity now to actually create a searcher team at New Beginnings School. So we're now starting to talk about that. Yeah, and we think that'll be interesting because one, they'll be closer culturally to the search request and know the types of things to search for. The second point, in-country content production, is another thing, because we realize now we've got a system in place that actually could change. There's no reason why Malawi content producers couldn't be communicating their content to us. So the flow of information could go from the global south to the global north now through the same system. And so there are cultural opportunities, and I've got to shout out both to Jamie and Ariana here, because both Zalika and the Kenya instance, they want to produce music production like I just showed with the videos. So there's an opportunity to create a special, maybe a searcher team that's specifically on music, that we could produce. And Waruk's in Kenya is specifically asking about this because he's a music producer there. And I know Toussaint would be interested in Zalika and the refugee camp. And, just a thought, on the content sharing, Ariana, your work with recipes, there wouldn't be any reason why we couldn't be getting recipes, Malawian recipes from people. Just as an idea to connect to the group. We've also thought about having searchers teams expand to other universities. This doesn't really get the cultural closeness aspect, but when we were running pre-pandemic, our team was maxed out. We had about 20 different locations and we couldn't keep up with the requests. And we're kind of having trouble keeping up with the requests right now with just 5. So the idea of having another university searcher team would be wonderful. Doing the same thing that would kind of adopt schools that they support. And then the last thing is, as I said, we've done this without any funding whatsoever. Part of it's my bandwidth, and I haven't had a chance to really write more grants to get this, but we want to scale up. And the big question is how do we get funding to help the people on the ground scale up, and in a way that's sustainable. So, ultimately, I think this needs to be connected to the country's education programs, their educational agencies. But we're kind of in that middle ground where we've got something operational now, but how do we get it moving and scaling and supporting the people on the ground to do more? So thanks. I went too long, sorry, but I've got at least 15 minutes to chat.
Great.
Any reactions? Thank you. I can't hear very well, unfortunately.
Really? Good, we're not.
Yeah, thank you so much.
No kidding.
We have some time for questions. If it's all right, I would like to take advantage of the chair's privilege now for the question. So I am curious about, I'm sorry if you said this and I missed it, but I'm curious if you've partnered with like an African Studies Center. I'm thinking about IU has a really deep history of the African Studies Department, and how in terms of getting that cultural knowledge, like having some as an anthropologist, raised of anthropologists, but there's people who study culture in all sorts of different ways,
Right.
to be a part of that. And I think that would help perhaps with some of the cultural knowledge and for undergraduate and graduate students in the US, this would be an opportunity to do some cultural learning and connecting while completing their studies in the US.
Yeah, spot on, Ariana. The main connection at UMass I've been working with is our Center for International Education. So that isn't the same thing as our Africa Studies program, and you've reminded me that I really should do that. Within the Center for International Education, there have been several PhD students from Malawi that I've worked with. So that's where I've kind of had the focus. But you're absolutely right; I should do that. On the Center for International Education, one area we've talked about going after some funding is one of the colleagues there is an expert in refugee trauma.
Mhm.
And given now that we've got an operational instance in Deslika, we have the opportunity to actually go after some funding to create a what's the term? Educational program to teach people in Deslika how to support people with trauma, particularly the problems some of the, trauma refugee often have. So that's the area we've been focused on, but you're right. I should take that farther with the Africa Studies Department. And again, if anybody here sees a possibility of connecting this to the Ostrom Workshop or Indiana University, I'd be more than welcome to talk more about that.
Mhm.
Charlie, as soon as this gets ready to post, I'm on our task force here at IU, working in these areas, and so I'll start the process and begin to connect you to the right people so we can be engaged with this. It's an amazing opportunity that I won't miss the opportunity to engage with.
Awesome, Angie. Yeah, and I mean, this is all central to this is knowledge commons, right?
Yeah.
Or using IASC terms.
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah,
think
just
this
so you
really
know,
falls under both the cultural commons group and the broader commons governance, as well as, other parts of the Ostrom Workshop too, that are interested in technology related things. So, but I would welcome that, Angie.
Awesome.
Oh, no, you go.
So you know Jeff Aristide, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I had, Jeff Aristide is over my head.
Yeah, exactly.
It's another connection that needs to
Right.
be made.
So, so we have a colleague that has been, actually how we met Angie originally was because
Yeah.
Jeff pushed us to go to this conference at Vanderbilt, but anyway, so there's these.
Conference.
Yeah, the conference was terrible, but we met
We
Angie.
met a whole bunch of really cool people.
Yeah.
I don't remember, it was just, that was all.
Anyway,
Good fun, I gotta leave.
so Jeff Aristide is like, okay, we have to just make this connection. It's really
Yes.
super important. Anyway, so he has a group, his organization is called the Internet Bar Organization, and he is Lawyers for Social Justice Ground Up. And some of the one that I know that is well established is something called the Peace Tones.
Yes.
Somewhere in Africa, I don't know where, but in like whatever is the very largest refugee camp, he gets
Here,
them in,
I think it might be this one.
no, that's not the biggest. No, it's not in Malawi.
No, it's
Very, very big, the biggest one, the most overcrowded, all the people that,
I mean.
yeah,
it's
yeah.
great.
But anyway,
It's great.
the idea is that, he's trying to raise funds for these young musicians, just young kids and they use trash for their instruments and all that kind of stuff. So it's such a good play-in with what you've got.
Oh, wow.
We haven't
yeah.
talked to Jeff in maybe a year, so
That's
I have to get back to where he is right now. He also had another musician, Be for the World or Be One World or something, who was also doing something in another part of Africa.
Sierra Leone.
So he's got the music thing, he's got the law, the justice, justice for all. And they put it in with the libraries and the open access stuff. It's like, oh, this is a great recipe, right? Anyway,
Well,
so
I would love that contact.
we'll connect you, definitely.
I'm sequestered in a room and of course my pen just ran out of ink.
Yeah.
Oh, no. We have devices.
Yep. I gotcha.
We do.
So I've just opened up a Word document, but his name was Jeff what?
Aristide, Arestty, and the organization is called Internet Bar.
Yeah.
Internet Bar Association.
No, it's not association, it's just internetbar.org.
He's a lawyer, so there it is.
And look up the Peace Tones
Yeah, I was trying to send it to you, but
I think Peace Tones is one word.
Yeah, Peace Tones is one word.
peacetones.org, but I'll send it to you when I'm not on my phone because it's hate.
Great.
Like,
And they're on Facebook.
Of course.
Yeah, and they're peacetones.org.
I'll get you, and I'll, or Joyce, whoever can get you an email today introducing you to him.
Yeah,
And the other one is
internetbar.org. Internetbar.org, I think is the,
What's
Wait
the
a
suggestion there to possibly just talk, get to know each other, learn what we're
Yeah.
doing, and then see
Yeah.
if maybe there's an opportunity to go after a grant together or something?
yeah. Well, he actually has a lot of people working for him too, so.
Oh, cool.
Cause he's one of those, come help me, and they do.
Charisma.
Yeah, he does.
I don't know what it is.
Persistence is what he,
Doc, I saw your hand up.
Persistence, that is so.
just a sharp and peripatetic lawyer.
Yeah.
My question is about Peter Suber. Is there any further possibilities there? I mean, he's big at the Harvard Library thing and they're connected to everywhere, the world's largest academic library, and it just, I would imagine his tentacles are all over.
You know, that's a really good question because it's, the last time I've talked to him, I think was when he gave his talk about OuterNet, and I don't think I've ever reached out to tell him the story of what he launched from that talk.
Oh, really? Oh, you should.
Oh,
So, yeah, I should probably reach out to him and hopefully he'll remember me. But again, you know, I met him in the Tocqueville room when Lynn was working on the Knowledge Commons book with Charlotte Hess. So yeah, that's a good idea. I'll reach out to him.
Yeah, reach out to him. Also, though it's unrelated to anything, his original business was he was a comedian at one point. Not, he doesn't come across as a funny guy, but he was actually a comedian at some point. It's like, pick the person in this room who used to be a comedian. You wouldn't go to him. Right? That's what he
maybe
did.
that's why he's not a
Right, he doesn't give that air.
All the funny all ran out.
Yeah.
And I'll talk to David Weinberger also. He's very big in library everything, and then what about Todd?
Yeah, we'll take this offline.
We'll take this
A
offline.
lot more for you.
We know people.
His answer's off, I think.
Yeah, I really appreciate
That's a
it.
good idea.
I think, I'm curious what you all think. For me, it really does feel like what we need to do is try to get searcher teams on the ground in country. And then that raises some really interesting questions about, well, I have one colleague that has been, I think it's with Open Education Resources South Africa. I don't think that's the right name. But you know, how we get content that's in their native languages, you know, it raises a whole new thing. Like, you know, how would you build the kind of Rachel OER, but it's the Malawi content, is a really interesting puzzle. But once you have that, you could then put that, we could probably work with World Possible, the Rachel developers, to put that library on Rachel's as they go forward. So yeah, I'm really trying to think about how you can be closer to the ground and respectful in terms of the knowledge and authorship and cultural production that's being done in the country that could be shared with other people in that country. But that's something we're just on the cusp of potentially starting, but. And then I guess the other thing is I really wondered, we had one healthcare center operational. And that, I don't really understand why that kind of stopped on that. But when, you know, we have these, when the pandemic happened, we were getting some serious requests about, you know, how do you, we want information on how you make cleaner to, you know, kill the virus. And if we move into the healthcare, it really makes me think we need to have a searcher team, you know, in a medical school or something, because boy, that's not something I personally want to do any searches for if I don't have any knowledge about a disease or something. So that's an interesting, you know, I guess I'll close just by saying what's interesting about this is the more once we've gotten this operational, there just seems to be all kinds of directions it can go. Yeah.
Yeah, wow, this is an amazing project, Charlie.
Yeah.
It's been so cool. You're absolutely right. This is 100% a cultural commons topic. Like you brought up the term commons-based peer production, and I heard that and I thought, oh, that's a great way to describe a project that I'm working on and that I'll talk about in our group, and if whether it's this, in March or April. So I am gonna do that. We're just waiting on other people because I can slot myself in wherever there's a need. So I love that term. When you're in person, I wanna wrestle with that a bit more with you. On the music side of things, I mean, I can't make promises now, but I can certainly say I would try to establish those connections because we do have a robust, sense of volunteerism within the Jacobs School. There are lots of student organizations that do different kinds of volunteer type projects, which I could see this being up their alley. Our music production program is also really, really strong. Like Taylor Swift's producer graduated from the program here. So, yeah, so I mean, so we do have a lot of those strengths. The question for me is tapping into those networks and seeing who would want to be interested. And that could be either, yes, we could get lots of people who would sign up, or it would be a matter of persistence, right? Just letting people know we're here, so.
I know we're almost out of time, but one thing on that thread, so Warooks, the guy in Kenya, he's really been struggling to get this operational, and I've through UMass funds gotten him some funds to try to get it start up. And the one way I'm finding that we might be able to do this is our UMass has registered student organization clubs, and those clubs get $900, I think, a year for activities. And so right now I've been paying the digital postage out of my own pocket, but one way for sustainability for the digital postage side is I'm trying to get UMass registered student organizations to allow us to use the student club money for digital postage, for one. And then secondly, to give some of that funding to Warooks to get this one music school, I guess, that he wants to create going. And if we get that going, it's kind of interesting, Jamie, to think about, like, I don't know what kind of requests we'll get yet.
Yeah.
From that, but I could easily WhatsApp him and say, if we got this going, what kinds of, because he was saying to me he wanted to get in touch with the music school. But I don't know what exactly he'd be asking for, but it would get into some interesting, I don't know if they're going to be asking for music, and like, is there an open?
Yes, there is.
Is there a database of open music, openly Creative Commons licensed music?
Yes, there is. Yes, it's called IMSLP. I can email that to you.
Perfect.
But
Yeah, or he's probably going to want, I want lessons for how to, I don't know, it'll be really kind of an interesting conversation to hear what exactly he'd want.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, I have like a question about the content that you sent. Do you know if it's cataloged so that students with similar requests can go to the Rachel and find it?
Oh, that's a brilliant question. And I've got a brilliant student on our team that's already thinking about this. So in the first years of this, we didn't have a good operation in terms of, we would do the searches and send them, but then we weren't storing them systematically. And now I've got a promising student who I think now wants to be a librarian, so it's probably going to go on for an MS in information science or something. And she right now is actually building a database of all the content we found and organizing them. So if that's getting your question, because we're realizing that sometime, I don't know, we've probably been asked one question more than once already, but we're expecting we probably will get asked that at some point.
Yeah.
So having a library of the things we find, is that what you were suggesting, Jamie?
Yeah, exactly. Like once it's on the Rachel, can they even have access to that database, or is it just you have to send them the materials every time the request comes in?
Well, once it's on the Rachel in one location, it's there, but it doesn't get propagated to the other Rachels.
Yeah, cause it's not online, right? The
Yeah.
Rachel
It's
is
not
not.
online.
Yeah.
So
It's
we would have to
offline.
develop a workflow to actually take. That, I mean, that would be how Malawi would start sharing content to each other. Is that they would use their Rachels for content produced by any local, like, can you imagine in Deslika? I know we're out of time.
Yeah.
Can you imagine in Deslika how much knowledge and is in that 60,000 people place?
Yeah.
And if they figure out a way, if there's a way to get that knowledge that people want to share and write, just like the video, the dancing video is an example.
Yeah.
If we can figure out a way to get them, they can, if they can get it digital, they could get it to their Rachel on that file share system. And now the question is, then what we'd want is the courier to transmit it back to us. So then we could distribute it to others.
Yeah.
But it gets, then now we're getting into more data, more digital postage and, so there's gotta be some kind of financing arrangement around this all, but it's absolutely feasible.
By the way, Peace
Thank
Town's,
you, everyone. I really appreciate everybody's time and.
This is amazing.
Really-
We have a lot more to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was saying, Peace Towns, I think is Zambia.
Zambia,
It's right next door.
yeah.
Malawi.
Who is?
Peace
Zambia.
owns that group we were telling you about.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay, I do want to respect that we're officially at time. So let's give one more round of applause for Charlie.
Well, thanks to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone for being here online and in person. And we'll see you hopefully next Wednesday at the rehearsal, for the ballet rehearsal, Wednesday, March 6th. And then our next breakfast chat is the Wednesday after spring break, March 20th. Thank you
Thanks,
all.
everybody.
Thank you. And the recording. How do I do that? Oh, yeah.
Oh, there it's down there. Ariana, pause stop recording. Oh, yeah, you found it. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
I'm learning.